Hey guys, tonight we are going to do something a little different. We're going to step away from the mainland, from the noise of cities and the predictable rhythm of life on solid ground. We're going to take on a new job, in a place of profound solitude and immense responsibility. We're becoming a lighthouse keeper in 19th century Maine. Now, I should warn you, this isn't a job for the faint of heart. It's cold, it's lonely, and your only co-workers are seagulls who, let's be honest, probably think they could do your job better. You'll be surrounded by the endless, moody Atlantic, and your most exciting social event for months might be a particularly interesting piece of driftwood washing ashore. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a quiet corner of the internet, and I'm glad you're here to share it with me. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is in your part of the world. It's always nice to see where these stories land. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The letter arrives on a Tuesday. It's thin, crisp, and smells faintly of official ink and the distant bureaucracy of Washington. Your name is on the front, written in a severe, decisive hand. You've been waiting for this, but not with the kind of certainty that lets you sleep at night. It was a long shot, an application submitted more out of a sense of desperation than genuine qualification. You're not a sailor, not a man of the sea. You're a man who needed a steady wage and a roof over his head, and this peculiar opportunity promised both, albeit a very specific, very round roof. The letter is from the United States Lighthouse Board. It informs you, in no uncertain terms, that your application for the post of principal keeper at the Matinicus Rock Light has been accepted. The name sounds mythical, severe. Matinicus Rock. You try to picture it, but all your mind can conjure is a gray smudge in a vast expanse of blue. The appointment is provisional, the letter states, pending a satisfactory probationary period. The pay is $400 a year. It feels like a fortune and nothing at all at once. There's a quiet debate among those who study such things. Historians still argue about how much the old political spoils system influenced these appointments in the mid-19th century versus a genuine push to professionalize the service. Was it your cousin's vague connection to a state representative that tipped the scales? Or was it the sheer lack of applicants for a post so notoriously remote? The truth, you suspect, is a bit of both. The previous keeper, a man you've never met, apparently resigned after a particularly harsh winter, citing a disagreement with the gulls. You assume that's a euphemism for a fraying mind. You pack your life into a single sea chest. A few worn shirts, 2 pairs of thick wool trousers, a Bible your mother gave you, a small collection of books, and a tin of tobacco. It doesn't look like much. It doesn't feel like the start of a noble new career. It feels like a retreat. The journey to the coast is by wagon, a rattling, dusty affair that feels like it's shaking the mainland right out of your bones. And then you see it. The ocean. It's bigger and louder than you had imagined, a churning, gray-green entity that seems to breathe. At the docks, the harbor master points you toward a small, stout boat, the Puffin, which will be your chariot. It looks less like a puffin and more like a waterlogged barrel. The boat's captain is a man named Silas, whose face is a roadmap of wrinkles carved by sun and sea salt. He eyes your single chest and gives a noncommittal grunt. She's a lonely rock, he says, and that's the extent of his small talk for the first hour. The boat ride is a slow, methodical separation from everything you have ever known. The coastline recedes, the familiar shapes of trees and buildings dissolving into a green and brown line, and then, nothing but a smudge. The air grows colder, cleaner, thick with the smell of salt and something else, something wild and ancient. The rhythmic creak of the boat's timbers and the slosh of water against the hull becomes the only sound in the world. You sit on a coil of rope, your hands numb, and watch as Silas navigates not by any map you can see, but by instinct, by the shape of the swells, by the feel of the wind. After what feels like an eternity, he points a leather, gloved finger toward the horizon. There she is, he grunts. At first, you see nothing. Just the endless, rolling sea. You squint, your eyes watering from the wind, and then you spot it. A tiny, vertical scratch against the sky. It's impossibly small, a needle dropped in an infinite haystack. As the puffin chugs onward, the scratch slowly grows, resolving itself into a shape, a tall, white tower standing defiantly on a low, dark sliver of rock. There's another, shorter tower beside it, and a small, squat building connecting them. It looks stark, clean, and utterly alone. There is no beach, no gentle slope. Just jagged, unforgiving rock rising from the churning water. This isn't just a new home. It's a different planet. The boat circles to a slightly more sheltered side, where a crude iron ladder is bolted into the rock face. Silas cuts the engine, and the sudden silence is deafening, broken only by the roar of the surf and the shrieking of 1,000 seabirds. This is it. Matinicus Rock. Your kingdom. Your prison. Silas doesn't offer to help with your chest. It's not his job. Your job is to get your life from his boat onto that rock. The iron ladder is slick with sea spray and a thin layer of green algae. Each rung is a small prayer. The boat bobs unpredictably below you, and for a terrifying moment, as you cling to the cold metal, you are suspended between your old life and your new one, belonging to neither. You pause, halfway up, your knuckles white, and the sheer force of the place hits you. The air thrums with the bass note of the surf crashing just feet below you. The cries of the gulls are not cheerful, they are territorial and sharp. This is their world. You are the intruder. Finally, your boot scrapes against solid rock. You haul yourself onto the narrow ledge, heart pounding, and then go back to haul up the chest with a rope Silas tosses you. He gives a final, curt nod, the engine of the puffin sputters back to life, and without another word, the boat begins to pull away, already turning back toward the mainland. You watch it shrink, a sturdy little beetle on the vast sheet of gray, blue, until it is indistinguishable from the whitecaps. And then, it's gone. The silence it leaves behind is absolute, a physical presence. You are alone. Utterly and completely. A heavy iron key, which Silas had given you, feels cold and solid in your hand. It fits into the lock of a thick wooden door set into the base of the short, squat building that connects the two towers. The door groans open, complaining about the damp salt air. The smell that greets you is a complex blend of cold stone, kerosene, damp wool, and the lingering scent of last winter's coal smoke. It's the smell of institutional loneliness. Your footsteps echo as you explore. There's a small kitchen area, a living space, and a storage room. But the most dominant feature is the door on the far wall. The door to the main tower. It stands there like a promise and a threat. Beyond it lies your purpose, your entire reason for being on this forsaken rock. For now, you leave it closed. You need a moment to acclimate, to accept the stark reality of these four walls. You run a hand over the rough stone. It's cold, unyielding. You look out a small, thick, paned window. Your view is not of a garden or a street, but of a churning, endless expanse of water. There is no other land in sight. As dusk begins to settle, the sky puts on a show. The gray clouds break apart, and streaks of orange, pink, and deep purple paint the horizon. It is the most beautiful, and most desolate, sunset you have ever witnessed. There is no one to share it with, no one to turn to and say, "Look at that." The beauty is yours alone, and that ownership makes it feel heavy, almost sad. The light drains from the sky with an alarming speed, and a deep, profound darkness settles over the rock. It's a darkness that doesn't exist on the mainland, a blackness unfiltered by the glow of other houses or street lamps. It is pure and total. And with the darkness comes the cold. It seeps through the stone walls, through the floor, a damp, penetrating chill that seems to emanate from the sea itself. You light a small kerosene lamp on the table, and its warm, flickering glow pushes back the shadows, creating a tiny island of light in the immense dark. You make a small meal from the provisions you brought, hard biscuits and a slice of salted pork, and eat at the table, the silence broken only by the sound of your own chewing and the distant, constant roar of the waves. The time has come. You can't put it off any longer. The whole purpose of this place, the entire reason for your existence here, is waiting for you behind that door. You take a deep breath, the cold air filling your lungs. You pick up the lamp, its light casting your own long, dancing shadow against the wall. You walk to the door of the tower, your heart a steady, heavy drum in your chest. Your hand closes around the cool brass knob. It's time to go to work. It's time to climb the stairs and introduce yourself to the light. You turn the brass knob, and the tower door swings inward, revealing not a room, but a void. A spiral staircase, made of cast iron, winds its way up into perfect darkness. The air that flows out is still and cool, carrying the faint, metallic scent of oil and machinery. Holding your lamp high, you take the first step. Your boot clangs against the iron, the sound shockingly loud in the enclosed space. It echoes up into the darkness and down into the foundation, as if the tower itself is announcing your presence. The climb is dizzying. The stairs are narrow and steep, winding relentlessly upward. Your small lamp casts strange, swirling shadows that make it hard to find your footing. You place a hand on the cold, curved wall for balance. There are no windows, no points of reference, just the repeating pattern of the steps and the ever-present curve of the wall. With each turn, you feel a little more disoriented, as if you're being screwed into the very heart of the rock. You pass a small landing with a single, thick-paned window. You pause, catching your breath, and peer out. From this new height, the sea looks even more vast and intimidating. The horizon is gone, swallowed by the night. You continue to climb, your legs beginning to ache. Finally, you see a sliver of light from under a trapdoor above you. You push it open and emerge, not into a room, but into a cathedral of glass. This is the lantern room. After the cramped darkness of the stairwell, the space feels vast and ethereal. Glass panes, thick and angled, form a circle around you, offering a staggering 360-degree view of the black ocean and the star-dusted sky. The wind howls outside, a low, mournful song, but in here, it's strangely quiet, muffled by the thick glass, and in the center of it all, it stands. The lens. It takes your breath away. It's not just a big piece of glass, it's a magnificent, intricate sculpture of light and science. A first-order Fresnel lens, named for its French inventor, Augustin-Jean Fresnel. It stands taller than you, a glittering beehive of concentric glass rings, all cut and angled with impossible precision, surrounding a central bullseye prism. It's a work of art, a marvel of optical engineering designed for a single purpose, to gather every stray photon from a simple oil lamp and focus it into a single, piercing beam of light that can slice through miles of darkness. This, you realize, is the soul of the lighthouse. Your predecessor has left it in immaculate condition. The brass framework that holds the hundreds of glass prisms gleams, and the glass itself is so clear it seems almost invisible. You walk around it slowly, your little lamp feeling hopelessly inadequate in its presence. Inside the vast crystal structure, you can see the lamp itself, a large, multi-wick burner sitting on a pedestal, its empty fuel tank waiting. With the lamp prepared, you strike a match. The flame sputters to life, small and yellow. You carefully lower the glass chimney over it, and the flame steadies, growing into a bright, white light. Now, for the second part of the magic. Near the base of the lens apparatus is a clockwork mechanism, a complex system of gears and weights. You find the heavy iron crank. You must wind it, lifting a heavy weight that has descended deep into the core of the tower. It's physically demanding work. You crank and crank, the muscles in your back and arms screaming, until the mechanism is fully wound, then, you release a lever. There is a soft, satisfying click, and with a barely perceptible hum, the great lens begins to turn. Slowly, gracefully, the multi-ton behemoth starts its silent, clockwise rotation around the steady flame. You step back in awe. As the central bullseye aligns with the lamp, it gathers the light and sends a brilliant, solid spear out into the night. It sweeps past you, momentarily blinding you, and then it's gone, journeying across the dark water. You watch it travel, a sliver of pure white against the absolute black, until it fades into the horizon. Then comes the darkness, the eclipse, followed by the next magnificent flash. The first dawn on the rock is as spectacular as the sunset, but it feels different. It's not an ending, but a beginning. As the first hint of pale light appears on the eastern horizon, you climb the winding stairs again. This time, the climb feels less like an ascent into mystery and more like the commute to a job. Your job now is to put the light to bed. Inside the lantern room, the world outside the glass is transforming from black to a soft, pre-dawn gray. The beam from your lens still looks powerful, but as the ambient light grows, it begins to look a little tired, a little pale. Following the official procedure, you wait for the precise moment of sunrise, when the top edge of the sun crests the horizon. Then, you snuff out the great lamp. The sudden absence of its intense glow is jarring. The lantern room is plunged into a normal, unmagical light. The lens, without a flame at its heart, seems to retract into itself, becoming a dormant, glassy object rather than a living beacon. You draw the heavy linen curtains around the entire glass enclosure of the lantern room. This is a crucial step. The curtains protect the delicate lens from the sun's rays. A lens of this power could, if the sun hit it at just the right angle, concentrate the light and act as a massive magnifying glass, potentially starting a fire. The soul of the lighthouse must sleep in darkness during the day. You might have thought that your work was done until sunset. You would be profoundly wrong. As you'll soon discover, being a lighthouse keeper is about 10% operating a light and 90% cleaning. The salt air is a relentless enemy. It coats everything in a fine, corrosive film. It seeks to tarnish, to rust, to devour. Your job is to fight it, every single day. This is the tyranny of polished brass. You open a supply closet and find the tools of your new trade. Tins of brass polish, blocks of soap, a fine abrasive powder called rotten stone, and dozens of soft cloths. The official Instructions to Light Keepers manual, your new Bible, has a schedule. And today's schedule, like every day's schedule, begins with brass. You start with the lamp's ventilator cap, a large, ornate brass hood above where the chimney sat. You work your way down, the framework of the lens itself, every knob, every hinge, every decorative flange. It is painstaking, repetitive work. You rub the polish on, let it dry to a haze, and then buff it off with a clean cloth until the metal gleams like gold. Your reflection, distorted and fish-eyed, stares back at you from a curved surface. Historians and sociologists still debate the underlying purpose of the Lighthouse Board's rigid cleaning schedules. Was all this polishing truly necessary to prevent corrosion, or was it a deliberate psychological strategy? A way to keep a solitary man's mind occupied with endless, tangible tasks, to impose order on a life surrounded by the chaos of the sea and to stave off the profound melancholy that came with idle hands. As your arm aches and your knuckles are raw, you suspect it's a healthy dose of both. After the brass comes the glass. First, the lantern room windows themselves, inside and out. The outside is a terrifying ordeal. You strap yourself into a leather safety harness, a thin, dubious-looking piece of equipment, and edge your way onto the narrow iron catwalk that encircles the top of the tower. With the wind trying to pry you from your perch and the sea churning 100 feet below, you wash and dry each pane of glass until it is perfectly transparent. Then you retreat back inside to tend to the lens itself. Using the special deerskin cloth, you wipe away every speck of dust, every minute trace of soot from the night's work. You are a custodian to a giant, sleeping jewel. The list of chores seems endless. You descend from the lantern room to the watch room below, where you meticulously clean and oil the clockwork mechanism. You check every gear for wear, every cable for fraying. You sweep the iron staircase from top to bottom. You venture back to your dwelling to scrub the floors, clean the stove, and take a meticulous inventory of your supplies. The board wants to know everything. How much oil did you use? How many wicks? How much polish? Your life becomes a series of numbers in a ledger. A fascinating little detail of the service was the sheer volume of these domestic supplies. The annual allotment for a station like yours might include 40 yards of cotton cloth, 10 pounds of rotten stone, and 50 pounds of soap. You are running a remote, industrial-grade housekeeping operation. By late afternoon, your body aches in places you didn't know you had. You are not tired from a single, heroic effort, but worn down by 1,000 tiny, repetitive motions. You slump into a chair and look out the window. The sun is beginning its slow descent into the western sea. A day has passed. A day of scrubbing, polishing, winding, and wiping. And your reward for all this work is that you get to do it all again tomorrow. But first, you look toward the tower. The light inside the lantern room is fading. The sun is setting. It is time to wake the giant. Time to climb the stairs, pull back the curtains, and once again, set the light in motion. Weeks blur into a single, long day, punctuated by the rise and fall of the sun and the turning of the tide. Your life is a loop of polishing, climbing, lighting, extinguishing, and cleaning. The rock has become your entire universe. You know the name of every tenacious wildflower that grows in the cracks, you recognize the individual cries of the gulls, and you can predict the weather by the color of the sea and the feel of the air on your skin. Your initial supply of fresh potatoes is long gone. Your diet has narrowed to a rotation of salted beef, hardtack biscuits, and dried beans. You've gotten good at making coffee that tastes only faintly of the sea. The loneliness is no longer a sharp pang, but a dull, constant ache. It's a low hum in the background of your thoughts, like the ceaseless sound of the surf. You talk to yourself. You have lengthy, one-sided conversations with the gulls. You read your small collection of books over and over until you know the passages by heart. You wait. You don't know the exact day, but you know the supply tender is due sometime this month. Every morning, you scan the horizon not just as a keeper of the light, but as a man starved for contact. Then, one clear afternoon, you see it. A faint, dark smudge to the west. It's not a cloud, and it's not a whale. It's smoke. Your heart gives a little kick, a flutter of excitement you haven't felt in weeks. You grab the small spyglass issued by the board and climb to the watch room. You focus the lens, and the smudge resolves into the familiar, stout shape of the tender boat, the Puffin. It's still hours away, but it's real. It's coming. The world is coming to visit. As the Puffin arrives and circles to the landing ladder, the air is suddenly filled with unfamiliar sounds, the chug of the engine, the shouts of men, a snippet of a song someone is humming. Captain Silas is at the helm, his face as weathered as ever. He has 2 other men with him today. They work with a practiced efficiency, a ballet of logistics in the rolling sea. A small dinghy is lowered, piled high with crates, barrels, and sacks. Getting the supplies from the bobbing dinghy up the slippery ladder and onto the rock is a precarious, dangerous dance that you have to perform together. You stand on the rock, surrounded by your new supplies, and watch it disappear over the horizon. The sudden return of the silence is deafening. The brief flurry of human activity has only served to emphasize its absence. The rock feels more remote than ever. You carry the sacks and barrels inside, the smell of fresh onions filling your small kitchen. Lastly, you bring in the mail and the library box. You sit at your table and untie the twine. There are newspapers, 3 weeks old, and 2 letters. One is from your sister. You save it for last, a little reward. You open the first, official-looking envelope. It's a memo from the Lighthouse board, reminding all keepers to be vigilant in their record-keeping. Even in your profound isolation, the bureaucracy can reach you. Then you pick up your sister's letter, a fragile piece of paper that has traveled across the water, a tangible piece of home. The sun is setting. Soon, you will have to light the lamp. But for now, you sit and read, your world once again shrunk to the size of a single rock in the vast, indifferent ocean. It begins not with a storm, but with a strange and sudden stillness. The usual sound of the surf seems to muffle, the sharp cries of the gulls grow soft and distant. A damp chill permeates the air, carrying a thick, wet smell, like freshly turned earth mixed with salt. You look out the window of your dwelling and see it rolling in from the east, a solid, low-lying wall of white. The fog. It doesn't drift, it advances, consuming the horizon, swallowing the sea, until the water itself disappears. Within minutes, the fog bank reaches the rock, and your entire world vanishes. You step outside, and the effect is deeply disorienting. The air is so thick with moisture you can feel it on your face, beating in your beard and on your eyebrows. Sound dies instantly. Your own footsteps on the rock sound flat and dead. The main tower, only a dozen yards away, is a faint, ghostly silhouette. Your universe, once defined by the vast expanse of the ocean, has shrunk to a circle perhaps 50 feet in diameter. You are standing at the center of a cloud. As night falls, you light the great lamp as always. You watch the magnificent beam of light ignite and begin its rotation. But tonight, its journey is cut short. The beam, which normally slices through miles of darkness, hits the wall of fog and stops. It illuminates the thick vapor, creating a strange, ethereal glow that extends only a short distance from the tower before being utterly defeated. Your light, the pride of the station, is useless. A ship could be half a mile away and would never see it. This is when your other, far more brutal, job begins. In a small, sturdy stone building adjacent to the tower is the fog signal house. It is a place of brute force, the muscular counterpart to the delicate, intellectual elegance of the lantern room. You enter the low, dark space, and the air is thick with the smell of coal dust and cold iron. In the center of the room sits a massive steam boiler, a black iron beast laced with pipes and pressure gauges. Connected to it is the signal itself, huge, bell-shaped horn of polished brass, aimed out at the sea through an opening in the wall. This is a steam whistle, a far cry from the simple hand-rung bells of earlier lighthouses. It's a powerful piece of technology, but it is not automated. It is powered by coal, steam, and your own sweat. Your first task is to bring the beast to life. You open the furnace door, the iron groaning in protest, and begin to shovel coal into its belly. The work is heavy and rhythmic: scoop, lift, swing, release. You build the fire, coaxing it from a flicker to a roar. Then you wait, your eyes fixed on the pressure gauge, as the water in the boiler heats and the needle slowly, painstakingly, begins to climb. This is a tense, watchful period. Too little pressure and the whistle will be a pathetic wheeze. Too much, and you risk a catastrophic failure. As the needle reaches the designated red line, you feel a new vibration in the building, a low hum of immense power held in check. It is time. The station's characteristic is 1 5-second blast, every minute. You look at the clock on the wall. As the second hand sweeps toward the 12, you take a firm grip on a thick pull chain hanging from the ceiling. You pull down with all your weight. The sound that erupts is not a note, it is a physical assault. It is a deafening, gut-punching roar that shakes the very stones of the building. The vibration travels up the chain, through your arms, and into your teeth. You feel it in your bones. For 5 solid seconds, you are at the center of a controlled explosion of sound. And then you release it, and the silence that follows is even more profound, broken only by the high-pitched ringing in your own ears. Many keepers who manned powerful fog signals for years eventually suffered from significant hearing loss, a quiet sacrifice made in the name of making the loudest possible noise. Now you must do it again. In 60 seconds. And 60 seconds after that. For as long as the fog lasts. This could be hours. This could be days. Your life shrinks to a simple, grueling loop: check the pressure, shovel more coal, watch the clock, pull the chain. The heat from the boiler is intense, and soon you are slick with sweat, your face smudged with coal dust. The sheer consumption of resources is staggering. A station like this could burn through more than 1,000 pounds of coal in a 24-hour period of dense fog. Maritime historians and physicists still puzzle over the capricious nature of sound in fog. They know that temperature variations and atmospheric layers could create strange acoustic dead zones, areas where a ship, sailing in total blindness, would be completely unable to hear a fog horn that was, by all rights, blasting away just over the horizon. It's a terrifying thought, that you could be here, performing this backbreaking labor, and the very souls you're trying to save might be sailing in an island of perfect silence, heading straight for the rocks you're supposed to be warning them away from. But you can't think about that. All you can do is shovel, watch, and pull. You are a human clock, a living machine, feeding the screaming beast that cries out into the white, silent abyss. The fog has lifted. The sun is bright, the sea is a calm, deep blue, and the air is clean. The strenuous, deafening work of the fog signal has been replaced by a profound and welcome silence. Your morning chores are done, the brass gleams, the lens is shrouded and sleeping, the floors are swept. It is early afternoon. You have eaten your midday meal of biscuits and cold salted beef. And now, you are faced with the most challenging part of your day. You are faced with a block of empty time. In this profound isolation, time itself behaves differently. It is not a river, flowing steadily forward, it is a vast, still ocean. The hours don't pass, they loom. This emptiness is, in many ways, more dangerous than a winter storm or a rogue wave. A storm is a tangible enemy you can fight, or at least brace against. But boredom, true, deep boredom, is an internal foe. It's a quiet fog that can creep into the mind, breeding melancholy and strange thoughts. To survive out here, you must learn the art of doing nothing, which is, in fact, the art of finding something to do. Your greatest ally is the library box brought by the tender. It sits in the corner of your small dwelling like a treasure chest. Inside are a dozen books, their covers worn, their pages softened by the hands of other lonely men at other lonely stations. You pull one out, a collection of poetry, a novel about adventure in a desert, a dry history of some European monarch. The subject hardly matters. What matters is the escape. You settle into your chair, the one that faces the window, and you begin to read. The black and white print becomes a portal. You are no longer on a rock in the middle of the ocean, you are crossing a dune, or listening to a speech in a crowded hall. The book is a shield against the crushing weight of the present moment. When you tire of other people's words, you turn to your own. You write in a personal journal, separate from the official station log. You describe the color of the water, the way the light hits the rocks at dawn, the intricate patterns of the lichen growing just outside your door. You write down memories from your life before this one, trying to hold on to the person you were. The act of forming the letters, of wrestling your thoughts into sentences, is a powerful anchor. It is proof that you are still here, still thinking, still you, but the mind needs more than words. It needs the work of the hands. You find a piece of driftwood on the rocks during a low-tide walk, its wood smoothed and silvered by the sea. You take out your pocket knife, its blade sharpened to a razor's edge, and you begin to carve. You don't have a plan at first. You just let the knife follow the grain of the wood, peeling away fine, fragrant curls. An hour passes in what feels like a minute. Your world shrinks to the space between your hands, the pressure of the blade, the emerging shape. Slowly, a form takes hold, the sleek, curved head of a seal, like the ones you see sunning themselves on the lower ledges. You work on it for days, a little bit each afternoon, until you have a small, smooth effigy that fits perfectly in the palm of your hand. It is a small act of creation, of imposing your own order on a piece of the wild world. Psychologists and historians who study the lives of people in long-term isolation often discuss the function of these hobbies. Were they merely a way to kill time, to fill the empty hours? Or were they something deeper, a vital, non-conscious form of therapy? A way for a human mind, surrounded by the vast, uncontrollable chaos of the ocean, to create a small, manageable universe of its own, in a carving, a ship in a bottle, an intricate knot, and in doing so, maintain its own sanity and structure. You become a naturalist by necessity. You learn to identify the different gulls, the great black-backed gulls, the herring gulls, and their complex social structures. You begin sketching them in your journal, noting their behaviors. Many lighthouse keepers, armed with nothing but patience and a keen eye, made detailed observations of bird migrations that were later found to be of genuine value to ornithologists. You discover the tiny, vibrant world of the tide pools, full of sea anemones, starfish, and scuttling crabs. You are the sole inhabitant and self-appointed scholar of your tiny kingdom. These activities, reading, writing, carving, observing, are not frivolous. They are essential tools of survival. They are the ballast that keeps your mind steady. Each afternoon, you engage in one of these quiet pursuits, and you feel the dangerous, empty weight of the hours begin to lift. The sun starts its descent, casting long shadows across the rocks. The time for duty approaches. You put down your carving of the seal, its wooden form now smooth and familiar in your hand. The emptiness has been navigated, the void has been filled. You have made it through another afternoon. And now, it is time to go and light the lamp. One afternoon, during a lull in the wind, you decide to thoroughly clean a small, damp storage room at the base of the tower that you've largely ignored. It's full of discarded odds and ends from keepers past, half-empty tins of ancient paint, a broken pulley, frayed bits of rope. While clearing out a rotting wooden crate, your fingers brush against something small and leathery. You pull it out into the light. It's a child's shoe, small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. The leather is cracked and stiff from the damp salt air, the sole worn through. A ghost of a footprint. Holding this small, forgotten object, a profound realization settles over you. While you are here alone, you are in the minority. Many keepers did not face this solitude by themselves. They made the difficult, momentous decision to bring their families with them. You look around the cramped dwelling, at the single bunk, the 2 chairs. And you try to imagine it. The noise, the life, the chaos of a family contained within these same stone walls. The keeper's wife. The title doesn't exist in the meticulous ledgers of the Lighthouse board. She received no pay, no uniform, no official recognition. Yet, she was often the assistant keeper in everything but name. When the keeper was sick with a fever or injured from a fall, who climbed the winding stairs every night to light the lamp? When a storm raged for 3 days straight and the keeper was exhausted from manning the foghorn and couldn't keep his eyes open, who stood the watch from 2 a.m. to sunrise? The wife. She learned to trim the wicks, polish the lens, and wind the clockwork mechanism, her labor as essential as her husband's, yet entirely invisible to the world. Her domain was the dwelling, but her work extended to every corner of the rock. The simple act of cooking a meal became a logistical challenge, planning around the infrequent supply deliveries, making every provision stretch. She was the one who would try to coax a few hardy vegetables to grow in a small patch of soil she created herself, hauling seaweed up from the rocks to use as fertilizer, building a small stone wall to protect her precious patch of green from the salt spray. You walk outside and, behind the dwelling, find a small, square area where the rocks have been cleared, a faint outline of one such forgotten garden. You go back inside, holding the small shoe. You think of the child who wore it, who took their first steps on these stone floors, whose world was defined by the sound of the foghorn and the sweeping beam of the light. You don't put the shoe back in the rotting crate. Instead, you place it carefully on a small stone ledge inside the dwelling, a quiet monument to the unseen lives that filled this space before you. The silence of the room feels different now, heavier. It is populated by the ghosts of a family, a reminder that there are many ways to be lonely, and many ways to be brave. The change begins subtly. For 2 days, the air has been unnaturally still and heavy, the heat pressing down like a physical weight. The sea, usually in constant motion, becomes flat and glassy, with a deep, oily swell that seems to rise from its depths rather than from the wind. The gulls, your constant, noisy companions, grow quiet. They abandon their usual perches on the highest rocks and huddle together in sheltered crevices, facing the shore. They know what's coming. You've learned to trust their instincts. By the third afternoon, the sky to the northeast begins to curdle, turning from a hazy blue to a bruised, purplish gray. The sun disappears behind a thickening bank of clouds. A low, almost imperceptible moan begins in the air, the first breath of the wind. This will be your first true nor'easter. You have a new list of chores now, a storm bill. You walk the perimeter of your small rock, securing anything that could be washed away, spare buckets, coils of rope, the empty library box. You double-check the seals on the dwelling's door and windows, hammering in small wedges to make them tighter. You climb to the lantern room. The view is apocalyptic. The sea is no longer flat, it is a landscape of angry, rolling hills of dark water, streaked with white foam. The wind is picking up, pressing against the thick glass panes, making the iron framework of the lantern hum like a tuning fork. You check the lamp, the oil reservoir, the clockwork mechanism. Tonight, the light is not just a guide, it is a shield, a defiance against the encroaching chaos. You light it early, before the sun has fully set, wanting its steady beam to be ready before the worst arrives. And then the storm hits. It comes not with a gentle rain, but with a horizontal fusillade of water that hammers against the glass. The wind, which had been moaning, rises to a full-throated shriek. And the sea, which had been building, unleashes its fury. The first great wave strikes the base of the tower with a sound like a cannon blast. The entire structure, a masterpiece of 19th century engineering with its interlocking stones designed to be immovable, shudders. You feel the vibration come up through the soles of your feet, a deep, resonant tremor that speaks of unimaginable force. Your sole focus is the flame inside the lens. It is the heart of the tower, and your job is to keep it beating. After a particularly violent impact, you see the flame flicker and shrink. Your own heart seizes. You quickly open the lens housing, the heat washing over your face, and adjust the wick, coaxing the flame back to its full, bright, steady height. The lens doesn't care that there is a storm, it continues its slow, methodical rotation, sending its beam out into the maelstrom. It is a single, calm, rational thought in the middle of a screaming madhouse. The arrival of the first spring supply tender is a momentous occasion. After the long, hungry months of winter, the sight of the familiar, stout puffin on the horizon feels like a resurrection. It brings with it barrels of flour and salted pork, sacks of potatoes, crates of onions, and most importantly, mail. Along with a bundle of letters and old newspapers, the captain hands you a small, oilskin-wrapped package from the Lighthouse board and a sealed envelope. Back in your dwelling, you open the envelope first. Inside is a pay voucher for the last quarter. You stare at the number, $100. Part of your $400 annual salary. It seems like both a fortune and an insult. You try to quantify what it's for. Is it payment for the thousands of times you've climbed the tower stairs? For the weeks of back-breaking labor fighting the ice? For the terror of the nor'easter, or the helpless horror of watching the schooner break apart on the rocks? How can a number be placed on such things? In the 19th century, this was a modest but respectable wage. It wasn't enough to make a man wealthy, but it was steady. In an era of unpredictable harvests and volatile factory work, a reliable government check was a powerful lure. For many men, the appeal of this job wasn't romantic solitude, it was economic security. The salary, combined with the fact that your housing was provided, meant that a frugal man could save money, support a family back on the mainland, or build a small nest egg for his future. This piece of paper in your hand is the tangible, practical reason you endure the hardship. It is the economic bedrock of your lonely existence. You set the voucher aside and turn to the package. You unwrap the oilskin to find a thick, dark blue serge coat and a small cardboard box. The coat is heavy, the wool rough and durable. It's a new uniform jacket. You unfold it, and the smell of fresh dye and new fabric fills the room. It's a double-breasted sack coat, severe and official. In the small box are the buttons, gleaming brass discs, each one stamped with the image of a lighthouse tower inside a circle of rope. They are beautiful, intricate objects, tiny symbols of your office. This uniform isn't for your daily chores of cleaning and polishing. You would never wear this to haul coal or clear ice. This is for official duties only, for the inspector's visit, for greeting a visiting dignitary, for the rare occasions you might go ashore. It is a costume that transforms you from a solitary laborer into a federal employee, a representative of the United States Lighthouse Service. The board had implemented these standardized uniforms in the 1880s to promote a sense of professionalism and discipline, to elevate the keeper from a mere watchman to a member of a proud, vital service. In the new library box brought by the spring tender, amongst the novels and poetry, you find a tattered copy of a popular national magazine from a decade or so ago. Leafing through its pages, a headline catches your eye: "The Grace Darling of America, Heroism at Matinicus Rock." Your heart gives a small jolt. This is a story about your rock, your home. You settle into your chair as the afternoon light streams through the window, and you begin to read a story that will forever change the way you see this place. The story begins in 1853, when a man named Samuel Burgess is appointed keeper of the twin lights at Matinicus Rock. He brings with him his family, including his bright and capable teenage daughter, Abby. For Abby, this isolated stone, which feels so intensely masculine to you, was her home. She learned the duties of the light from her father, not as a chore, but as the natural rhythm of her life. She knew how to polish the lenses, trim the wicks, and read the moods of the sea. In January of 1856, the story turns. Keeper Burgess's supplies, particularly the oil for the lamps, were running dangerously low. He had no choice but to take his boat and make the perilous journey to the mainland, 25 miles away. He left Abby, then just 17 years old, in charge of everything: the two powerful lights, her invalid mother, and her 3 younger sisters. He expected to be gone for a day or 2 at most. He was gone for 4 weeks. Shortly after he left, one of the most ferocious nor'easters in memory descended upon the coast of Maine. The sea rose in a fury, cutting Matinicus Rock off from the entire world. For nearly a month, Abby Burgess was the sole keeper, guardian, and provider for her family. As you sit in your warm, quiet dwelling, you try to imagine it. You, a grown man, found the storm terrifying. What must it have been like for a teenage girl, her father gone, responsible for her entire family? The article paints a vivid picture. Abby raced between the 2 separate lighthouse towers, climbing the icy stairs in the gale, ensuring both lamps remained lit. The waves were so monstrous they swept over the entire island, crashing into the dwelling itself. At one point, the connecting causeway was washed away, and a wave shattered the window of the living quarters, flooding the room. Abby, calm in the face of chaos, moved her mother and sisters to the relative safety of the North Tower, which was stronger, and they lived there for the duration of the storm. One of the most famous details of her ordeal, a testament to her practical courage, involved the family's chickens. Their small coop was in danger of being washed away. Knowing that the chickens were a vital source of food, Abby watched the rhythm of the waves. Seeing a brief lull, she dashed out into the storm, gathered the frantic birds into her apron, and carried them to safety in the tower, just before another wave crashed over the spot where the coop had been. For weeks, she rationed their dwindling food supply until they were down to a single cup of cornmeal and 1 egg per day for the entire family. Every single night, without fail, she kept the lights burning, a steady, defiant beacon in the heart of the storm. When her father finally managed to return, nearly a month later, he found his station battered but intact, and his family safe. And in the lantern rooms, both lights were burning brightly. Abby's story became a national sensation. She would later marry the son of a subsequent keeper and go on to serve as an official assistant keeper at another lighthouse in Maine, making a life and career out of the service she had already mastered as a teenager. You put the magazine down and look around your small dwelling. This is the very room where she calmed her younger sisters. You look out the window at the tower. Those are the very stairs she climbed, night after night, in the howling gale. The history of this place is no longer an abstract collection of names in a logbook. It is the story of a young woman's incredible bravery. The phantom keepers you imagined in your fevered state are gone, replaced by the real, tangible spirit of Abby Burgess. You are not just occupying a government post. You are living in her house. And you feel a sudden, profound sense of humility, and a deep resolve to be worthy of the light she so valiantly kept. Humbled by the story of Abby Burgess, you sit at your desk with a fresh sheet of paper and a pen. The mail from the last tender lies beside you, a small, precious pile of connections to the outside world. To communicate from this rock is to engage in a strange and profound conversation with time itself. You are never speaking to the present moment, but always to the past and for the future. The act of writing a letter from here is a deliberate, calculated art. You dip your pen and begin to write to your sister. But what do you tell her? Do you describe the terrifying nor'easter that happened 6 weeks ago? By the time she reads this, it will be ancient history. Do you mention the grim spectacle of the shipwreck? To do so would be to inflict a worry that is long past its crisis point. Do you write about the gnawing loneliness you felt in the depths of winter? She would read it in the full bloom of summer, and her sympathy would be for a man who no longer exists. Then you turn to the letters you received. Reading them is an equally disorienting experience. Your sister's letter is full of news from a month ago. A neighbor's barn had a small fire but was saved. A cousin you were worried about has recovered from his illness. A local political squabble was resolved. You are reading the answers to questions you've long since forgotten you asked. Her words, full of the immediate concerns of her life, have traveled across the water and arrived here as history, notes from a world that has already moved on. Aside from these letters, your means of communication are primitive to non-existent. You have a set of signal flags, but they are only useful for communicating simple messages like all's well or supplies low to a vessel that is already in sight. They are useless for a conversation with the mainland. In the direst of emergencies, a keeper might have resorted to the most desperate of measures, a message corked in a bottle, or tied to a wooden float, and cast into the sea with a favorable tide, a prayer sent out on the currents with almost no chance of being answered. You pick up the newspaper that came with the mail. It is 4 weeks old. You read about national debates, crop prices, and faraway conflicts. It feels like reading a history book. The world's immediate passions and anxieties are, to you, fossils preserved in newsprint. This detachment provides a strange sense of peace, a godlike perspective on the frantic, fleeting concerns of mankind. But it also deepens your sense of removal. The world is a play, and you are sitting in a seat so far back you can only read about the performance weeks after the curtain has fallen. You reread your sister's letter one last time, memorizing the shape of her handwriting, imagining the room she was in when she wrote it. This piece of paper, which has traveled across the miles and the weeks, is a sacred object. It is proof that you are not forgotten, that you still exist in the minds of others. You place it carefully in a small wooden box with the others you've received, your archive of affection. Then you take your own finished letter, sealed with wax, and place it in the outgoing mail tin. There it will wait, a silent testament to your life here, a collection of curated thoughts waiting for a boat. You look out the window at the vast, empty expanse of the sea. It is the physical embodiment of the distance and the time your words must cross. And you feel the profound, aching slowness of your connection to the world. Your understanding of this rock is built on layers of experience, the physical routine, the terror of the storm, the specter of the wreck, the inspiration of Abby's heroism. But there is one fundamental question you have never truly considered: why? Why is this lighthouse here at all? Why this specific, remote, godforsaken patch of rock in the vast Atlantic? The answer, you discover, is not in a novel or a book of poetry, but in a dry, official-looking report you find at the bottom of the library box, titled, A Survey of Navigational Aids for the Coast of Maine, 1850. For every tragic story of a drowned sailor, there was a parallel story of lost capital that echoed in the boardrooms and counting houses of New England. The document lists the ships lost on the Dragon's Tooth and the surrounding reefs in the decade before your light was built. The Sea Serpent, carrying a full load of dimensional lumber from the forests of Maine, bound for a shipyard in Massachusetts. The Providence, laden with hundreds of valuable casks of lime, essential for the mortar used to build the growing cities. The Good Fortune, its hold filled with textiles from the great mills and salted cod for the markets of the West Indies. Each wreck was a devastating financial loss. You realize your lighthouse is not a monument, it is a piece of critical infrastructure, as vital to the 19th century economy as a railway bridge or a canal lock. Its purpose is to ensure the safe passage of goods and capital. The beam of your light is a guardian of commerce. The political process behind its construction was a slow, grinding battle of competing interests. The report mentions a rival petition from a town further up the coast, arguing that the light should be placed to better serve their port. There were debates in Congress over the cost, a staggering sum for a wave-swept tower built on a submerged ledge. It took years of lobbying from the shipping industry to finally get the project approved and funded. The revelation that your lighthouse is fundamentally a tool of commerce leaves a strange taste in your mouth. It's a disillusioning thought, one that threatens to strip the nobility from your lonely work. To counter this feeling, you decide to turn your focus away from the world of men, money, and politics, and toward the world at your feet. You will take a proper inventory of your kingdom, not of the supplies in your storeroom, but of the life that shares this rock with you. You begin with the flora, the stubborn, tenacious plant life. At first glance, the rock is just that, barren gray stone. But as you look closer, you see it is painted with life. Vast patches of lichen, in shades of dusty green, burnt orange, and deep black, cling to the rock faces. They are the pioneers, the first and oldest residents, slowly, patiently breaking down the stone, creating the possibility of soil. They are a living map of the wind and the sun, thriving in the crevices, fading on the exposed surfaces. In those sheltered cracks where centuries of lichen have created a teaspoon of soil, other things grow. You find clumps of sea lavender, its papery, purple flowers a shocking splash of color in the summer. There is the fleshy, green seaside goldenrod, and the tough, wiry grasses that seem to thrive on the salt spray. You have seen these plants 1,000 times, but you have never truly looked at them. Now, you see them for what they are, survivors, miracles of adaptation in an impossible environment. But the true heart of your kingdom is its fauna. You have come to know the seabirds not as a generic flock, but as a complex, squabbling, and hierarchical society. The great black-backed gulls are the kings, imperious and huge, stealing food from the smaller, more numerous herring gulls. The herring gulls, in turn, are the noisy, industrious citizens, their calls the constant soundtrack of your days. In the summer, elegant, swallow-tailed terns arrive, hovering and diving with breathtaking precision. And on the lower cliffs, the comical, stout-bodied guillemots and puffins nest, their colorful beaks a festive decoration on the somber rock. Your most peaceful neighbors are the seals. A colony of harbor seals uses a low, flat ledge on the far side of the rock as their preferred spot to haul out and sunbathe. You spend hours in the watch room with your spyglass, observing them. They are creatures of profound leisure, lolling on the rocks, fat and content. You watch them slide gracefully into the water, their sleek, dog-like heads bobbing in the surf. You listen to their strange chorus of barks, grunts, and groans, a surprisingly complex language that drifts over the water on a calm day. Twice a day, the tide recedes, revealing the most vibrant part of your ecosystem, the tide pools. Each small basin left in the rock is a miniature, self-contained universe. You crouch beside them, peering into the clear water. Starfish, both purple and orange, cling to the sides. Tiny hermit crabs, wearing borrowed shells, scuttle across the bottom. Sea anemones, the flowers of the sea, retract their green tentacles as your shadow passes over them. It is a world of silent, alien beauty, a reminder that life flourishes in the most unlikely of places. There are enemies you can see and fight. The fury of a nor'easter, the relentless siege of the winter ice, the grim reality of a shipwreck. But there is another enemy, one that does not announce itself with a roar of wind or a crash of waves. It arrives in silence. It breeds in monotony. It is the danger that comes from within. It begins with a week of foul weather. Not a violent storm, but a listless, oppressive fog and a steady, chilling rain that traps you inside. The world beyond your windows is a uniform, featureless gray. You are forced to run the foghorn for days on end, its deafening, repetitive cry becoming the soundtrack to a slow-motion nightmare. The work is exhausting, but it is the inactivity between the blasts that is truly corrosive. You are cooped up in your small dwelling, pacing the same few steps, seeing the same four walls, with nothing but the low moan of the horn and the thoughts in your own head for company. The first thing you notice is the silence becomes loud. During the intervals between the horn's blasts, the quiet presses in on you, and your own mind rushes to fill it with noise. You start talking to yourself, not just the occasional muttered comment, but full, animated conversations. You debate the merits of different polishing techniques with an imaginary version of the inspector. You have a long, detailed chat with the iron stove about its insatiable appetite for coal. This is the thing that keepers and sailors have whispered about for generations. It's the occupational hazard nobody likes to name. They had a term for it, a crude, unscientific phrase for the psychological toll of absolute solitude, going queer. It meant seeing things that weren't there, losing your grip, the slow, creeping unraveling of the mind. It was the fear that haunted every man who took a post like this. To fight it, you cling to routine with a ferocious, almost religious devotion. You begin to create small, meaningless rituals. You must stir your coffee exactly 7 times, clockwise. Your boots must be placed perfectly parallel to your bunk before you sleep. These small acts of order are a desperate attempt to build a cage of normalcy around a mind that feels like it's about to fly apart. The fear is not that there is a ghost in the tower. The fear is that there isn't one. The fear is that the whispers on the wind are your own invention, that the shadows in the corner of your eye are projections from the dark corners of your own mind. It is the terror of realizing that you can no longer trust your own perceptions. On the 5th day of the rain, you are standing in the dwelling, staring at the wall, lost in a reverie, when a sliver of yellow sunlight cuts through the window and falls across the floor. You blink, as if waking from a long dream. The rain has stopped. The fog is breaking up. The horn falls silent. You shake your head, a physical effort to clear the cobwebs. You look around the room, which suddenly looks normal again. The stove is just a stove. The water stain is just a stain. You are alone. The realization is, for the first time in a long time, a relief. You have sailed close to the edge, but the weather has broken, and you have come back. But a new fear is now lodged deep in your heart, more chilling than any storm, the fear of the ocean inside your own head. Progress arrives at your rock in the form of the supply tender, but it brings more than the usual sacks and barrels. As the puffin anchors in the calm spring water, a second boat is lowered, carrying not just Silas, but 2 men in clean work clothes, carrying tool bags. Silas introduces them as technicians from the district depot. "They've come to upgrade your lamp," he says, with the flat tone of a man delivering a fact he has no opinion on. An upgrade. The word feels both exciting and ominous. For generations, the lifeblood of this lighthouse, and every lighthouse, has been whale oil. You are an expert in its use. You know its viscosity in the cold, the specific way it burns, the character of its soft, yellow light. It is a technology you have mastered. But the great whaling fleets are in decline, and the world is changing. The technicians are here to bring that change to your lantern room. They are here to convert your station to kerosene. You lead them up the winding stairs, feeling like a tour guide in your own home. They are brisk, efficient, and speak a language of technical jargon you don't fully understand. In the lantern room, they set to work, and you are relegated to the role of observer. With a series of clangs and scrapes, they begin to dismantle the heart of your station, the beautiful, intricate, multi-wick whale oil burner you have so carefully tended. They lift it from its pedestal, this familiar companion, and set it aside like an artifact. In its place, they install a new apparatus, an incandescent oil vapor lamp. It looks simpler, yet more volatile, with a pressurized fuel tank, a delicate mantle, and a series of valves and pipes you don't recognize. This shift was a revolution for the Lighthouse service. Driven by the soaring cost of whale oil and the rise of the petroleum industry, the conversion to kerosene in the latter part of the 19th century was a massive undertaking. The new fuel was cheaper, more abundant, and, with the right technology, capable of producing a light of astonishing brightness. As the technicians work, they explain the new system. The kerosene is put under pressure with a hand pump. It is forced into a heated vaporizer tube, where it turns into a gas. This gas is then directed onto a delicate woven mantle, which incandesces, glows, with a brilliant, white light. The new light's output won't be measured in the old, vague terms. It will be measured in candle power. The old lamp might have produced a few thousand candle power. This new one, they tell you, will produce over 25,000. A quantum leap in brightness. Some old keepers, they admit, are resistant to the change. They claim the softer, yellower light of whale oil was better at cutting through haze and fog. There is no science to this, the technicians say dismissively. It's just old men being sentimental. Historians of technology and labor often debate the true impact of these moments. Did the new, more efficient technology de-skill the keeper's job, reducing him from a master of a complex, almost artisanal craft to a mere technician following a checklist? Or did it simply shift the required skills, demanding less art and more science, a knowledge of pressurized fuel systems and combustion chemistry? Watching these men work with a competence you do not possess, you feel a bit like a relic yourself. That night, as dusk settles, you climb the stairs with a new sense of trepidation. You perform the new ritual. You pump the handle, building the pressure in the tank. You light the small alcohol cup, preheating the tube until it glows a dull red. You take a breath, and you open the valve. There is a soft pop and a hiss, and the mantle catches, erupting not in a gentle flame, but in a dazzling, almost painfully brilliant white light. It is a tiny, captured sun. You step back, shielding your eyes. The beam that now sweeps out from the tower is a different beast entirely. It is not the warm, golden spear you are used to. It is a sharp, silver scalpel, slicing through the darkness with an intensity that seems to scour the sea. It is undeniably, unequivocally better. It is the light of the future. But as you stand your post, watching its powerful, silent rotation, you feel a pang of nostalgia for the softer, gentler flame of the past, the whale oil light that smelled of the sea, not of a factory. The job is the same, but it will never be the same again. It happens on an afternoon in late April. You step outside, and for the first time in what feels like an eternity, the sun on your face is not just light, it is warmth. A genuine, penetrating warmth that seems to travel down through your coat, through your skin, and into your very bones. You close your eyes and turn your face to it, a flower-seeking light. This is the thaw. This is the true end of winter. Over the next few days, your frozen kingdom dissolves. The great sheath of ice that has encased the tower for months begins to drip, a constant, musical patter on the stones below. Then, great sheets of it let go, crashing into the sea with a sound like thunder, returning to the water from whence they came. The iron ladder to the landing reappears, rung by rung. The rocks themselves emerge from their crystal shells, dark and wet and looking startlingly naked. The world is losing its sharp, brittle edges and becoming soft and fluid again. Life returns with an explosive, chaotic force. The seabird colony transforms from a quiet winter roost to a loud, bustling metropolis. The air is thick with the cries of thousands of gulls, terns, and guillemots, all engaged in the frantic, vital business of courtship, nest building, and territorial squabbles. Your rock is no longer a silent monument, it is a noisy, messy, vibrant nursery. You can watch fuzzy, mottled chicks hatch from their eggs and take their first, clumsy steps. Your spring cleaning begins. It is not a chore, but a joyful ritual of renewal. You throw open the shutters and the windows of your dwelling, letting the fresh, mild air flush out the stale, stagnant atmosphere of the winter. You scrub every surface, wash every blanket, and scrape away the winter's accumulated grime. You give the dwelling's door a fresh coat of cheerful white paint. This is not the defensive, grim work of autumn preparation. This is work fueled by hope. The psychological relief is immense. Environmental psychologists might call it seasonal affective relief, a formal term for the profound mental and biological reset that comes with the end of a long period of darkness and sensory deprivation. For you, it is simpler. It is the feeling of a great, heavy weight being lifted from your soul. You feel your own mind thawing along with the landscape. Then comes the definitive signal that the siege is over. The supply tender puffin appears on the horizon, but this visit feels different. The sea is calm, the air is mild. Silas and his crew can bring the boat right up to the landing without fighting the ice and the waves. They step onto the rock not as hurried, grim-faced men on a dangerous mission, but as neighbors dropping by on a fine afternoon. Their faces, no longer hidden by scarves and icy beards, are relaxed and smiling. The psychological relief is immense. Environmental psychologists might call it seasonal affective relief, a formal term for the profound mental and biological reset that comes with the end of a long period of darkness and sensory deprivation. For you, it is simpler. It is the feeling of a great, heavy weight being lifted from your soul. You feel your own mind thawing along with the landscape. Then comes the definitive signal that the siege is over. The supply tender puffin appears on the horizon, but this visit feels different. The sea is calm, the air is mild. Silas and his crew can bring the boat right up to the landing without fighting the ice and the waves. They step onto the rock not as hurried, grim-faced men on a dangerous mission, but as neighbors dropping by on a fine afternoon. Their faces, no longer hidden by scarves and icy beards, are relaxed and smiling. And they bring treasures beyond compare. Not just barrels and sacks, but crates of fresh food. You stare at them as if they are filled with gold. There are green cabbages, a sack of carrots, and a small, precious crate of apples. Silas tosses you one. You catch it, its skin smooth and cool in your hand. After months of food that was exclusively brown, gray, and salty, the apple's vibrant red color is a shock to the eyes. You bite into it. The snap of the skin, the explosion of crisp, sweet, tart juice in your mouth, is an overwhelming sensory experience. It is the most delicious thing you have ever tasted. It is the taste of a living, growing world, of sunshine and soil and rain. This single apple is a more potent symbol of spring's return than any date on a calendar. It is proof that the hungry months are over. The crew helps you unload the new supplies, their easy chatter filling the air. They bring you up to date on the mainland news, which now seems interesting rather than alienating. The world feels close again. After an hour, they depart, leaving you with a fully stocked larder and a renewed sense of connection. This time, when the boat disappears over the horizon, the silence it leaves behind is not empty or lonely. It is peaceful. It is the comfortable quiet of a home that is safe and secure. You stand on the rock, the sun warm on your back, and take another bite of the apple. The air is alive with the sound of the nesting birds. The sea is a gentle, promising blue. The long, hard winter is over. You have endured. You are reborn with the season. It happens on an afternoon in late April. You step outside, and for the first time in what feels like an eternity, the sun on your face is not just light, it is warmth. A genuine, penetrating warmth that seems to travel down through your coat, through your skin, and into your very bones. You close your eyes and turn your face to it, a flower seeking light. This is the thaw. This is the true end of winter. Over the next few days, your frozen kingdom dissolves. The great sheath of ice that has encased the tower for months begins to drip, a constant, musical patter on the stones below. Then, great sheets of it let go, crashing into the sea with a sound like thunder, returning to the water from whence they came. The iron ladder to the landing reappears, rung by rung. The rocks themselves emerge from their crystal shells, dark and wet and looking startlingly naked. The world is losing its sharp, brittle edges and becoming soft and fluid again. Life returns with an explosive, chaotic force. The seabird colony transforms from a quiet winter roost to a loud, bustling metropolis. The air is thick with the cries of thousands of gulls, terns, and guillemots, all engaged in the frantic, vital business of courtship, nest building, and territorial squabbles. Your rock is no longer a silent monument, it is a noisy, messy, vibrant nursery. You can watch fuzzy, mottled chicks hatch from their eggs and take their first, clumsy steps. Your spring cleaning begins. It is not a chore, but a joyful ritual of renewal. You throw open the shutters and the windows of your dwelling, letting the fresh, mild air flush out the stale, stagnant atmosphere of the winter. You scrub every surface, wash every blanket, and scrape away the winter's accumulated grime. You give the dwelling's door a fresh coat of cheerful white paint. This is not the defensive, grim work of autumn preparation. This is work fueled by hope. The psychological relief is immense. That night, you climb the tower to tend the light. The routine is the same, but it feels different. You go to the great clockwork mechanism. You take the heavy iron crank in your hands and begin the familiar, rhythmic work of winding it. Tonight, it feels temporary. Each turn of the crank feels like an act of nostalgia. The steady tick-tock of the clockwork no longer sounds like the heartbeat of the tower. It sounds like a clock, counting down. It is a mild afternoon in late spring, and as you mark the date in your logbook, a realization dawns on you with the quiet weight of a tide change. It has been exactly 1 year. 365 cycles of the light. One full journey around the sun on this isolated rock. You put down your pen and step outside. You decide to take a walk, a pilgrimage around the perimeter of your tiny island, and reflect on the man who arrived here and the man who stands here now. They are not the same person. You walk to the iron ladder at the landing, the spot where you first set foot on the rock, your heart a frantic drum of fear and uncertainty. The man who climbed this ladder a year ago was a landsman, soft and full of the mainland's anxieties. He was afraid of the sea, afraid of the solitude, afraid of failure. He saw the rock as a prison, a last resort. You look at it now and see it as a sanctuary, a place of profound reality in a world of trivialities. You pass the spot where you fought to secure the dinghy before the first autumn gales, and you remember the frantic race against the season. You lived through the autumn's preparations, a time of methodical anxiety. You think of the winter that followed, a long, brutal siege of ice and cold. You remember the bone-deep chill, the back-breaking labor of clearing the lantern glass, the feeling of being the only warm thing in a world frozen solid. That winter, which you feared would break you, instead forged you into something harder, more resilient. You stand on the eastern ledge and look out toward the Dragon's Tooth Reef. The ghost of the wrecked schooner is always there. You remember the storm, the feeling of the tower shuddering under the assault of the waves. You remember the helpless, sickening vigil as you watched the ship break apart. That day taught you the grim limits of your power. Your light is a warning, not a guarantee. The sea is always the final authority. It was a harsh but necessary lesson in humility. You wander over to the sheltered crevice where you huddled with the fishermen, Tom and Charlie, and you smile at the memory of their easy chatter. You remember the almost supernatural arrival of the migratory birds, a silent, feathered carpet that transformed the rock for a day. You remember the joy of the spring thaw, the taste of that first apple after months of salted meat, a flavor so intense it felt like a sacrament. This rock has not just been a place of hardship, it has been a place of small, intense joys. And you reflect on the solitude. For the first few months, it was your greatest adversary. It was a physical presence that you wrestled with daily. You fought it with hobbies, with work, with the sound of your own voice. But somewhere along the way, without you even noticing, it ceased to be a fight. The loneliness, which is the pain of being alone, slowly transformed into solitude, which is the peace of being alone. You learned to inhabit the quiet, to find companionship in the seals and the gulls, and in your own thoughts. The greatest challenges, you now understand, were not the ones that came from the outside. They were the internal storms. The blinding agony of the toothache and the terrifying decision to become your own surgeon. The week of fog and rain that nearly unmoored your mind, pushing you to the edge of seeing things. You faced the ocean within yourself, and you did not drown. Sociologists and psychologists who study such lives often debate the outcome. You know that both are possible. But as you stand on the highest point of your rock, feeling the gentle sea breeze on your face, you feel not broken, but whole. You have been scoured, stripped down to your essential components. The man who worried about the opinions of others, about status, about the trivial chatter of the mainland, he has been weathered away. The sun begins to set. As the great beam begins its sweep, you look out the lantern room glass. The man who arrived a year ago is gone. In his place is the keeper. He is quieter, more patient. He is scarred, but he is steady. He is solitary, but he is not lonely. He is home. It is a mild afternoon in late spring, and as you mark the date in your logbook, a realization dawns on you with the quiet weight of a tide change. It has been exactly 1 year. 365 cycles of the light. One full journey around the sun on this isolated rock. You put down your pen and step outside. You decide to take a walk, a pilgrimage around the perimeter of your tiny island, and reflect on the man who arrived here and the man who stands here now. They are not the same person. You walk to the iron ladder at the landing, the spot where you first set foot on the rock, your heart a frantic drum of fear and uncertainty. The man who climbed this ladder a year ago was a landsman, soft and full of the mainland's anxieties. He was afraid of the sea, afraid of the solitude, afraid of failure. He saw the rock as a prison, a last resort. You look at it now and see it as a sanctuary, a place of profound reality in a world of trivialities. You pass the spot where you fought to secure the dinghy before the first autumn gales, and you remember the frantic race against the season. You lived through the autumn's preparations, a time of methodical anxiety. You think of the winter that followed, a long, brutal siege of ice and cold. You remember the bone-deep chill, the back-breaking labor of clearing the lantern glass, the feeling of being the only warm thing in a world frozen solid. That winter, which you feared would break you, instead forged you into something harder, more resilient. You stand on the eastern ledge and look out toward the Dragon's Tooth Reef. The ghost of the wrecked schooner is always there. You remember the storm, the feeling of the tower shuddering under the assault of the waves. You remember the helpless, sickening vigil as you watched the ship break apart. That day taught you the grim limits of your power. Your light is a warning, not a guarantee. The sea is always the final authority. It was a harsh but necessary lesson in humility. You wander over to the sheltered crevice where you huddled with the fishermen, Tom and Charlie, and you smile at the memory of their easy chatter. You remember the almost supernatural arrival of the migratory birds, a silent, feathered carpet that transformed the rock for a day. You remember the joy of the spring thaw, the taste of that first apple after months of salted meat, a flavor so intense it felt like a sacrament. This rock has not just been a place of hardship, it has been a place of small, intense joys. And you reflect on the solitude. For the first few months, it was your greatest adversary. It was a physical presence that you wrestled with daily. You fought it with hobbies, with work, with the sound of your own voice. But somewhere along the way, without you even noticing, it ceased to be a fight. The loneliness, which is the pain of being alone, slowly transformed into solitude, which is the peace of being alone. You learned to inhabit the quiet, to find companionship in the seals and the gulls, and in your own thoughts. The greatest challenges, you now understand, were not the ones that came from the outside. They were the internal storms. The blinding agony of the toothache and the terrifying decision to become your own surgeon. The week of fog and rain that nearly unmoored your mind, pushing you to the edge of seeing things. You faced the ocean within yourself, and you did not drown. Sociologists and psychologists who study such lives often debate the outcome. You know that both are possible. But as you stand on the highest point of your rock, feeling the gentle sea breeze on your face, you feel not broken, but whole. You have been scoured, stripped down to your essential components. The man who worried about the opinions of others, about status, about the trivial chatter of the mainland, he has been weathered away. The sun begins to set. As the great beam begins its sweep, you look out the lantern room glass. The man who arrived a year ago is gone. In his place is the keeper. He is quieter, more patient. He is scarred, but he is steady. He is solitary, but he is not lonely. He is home. Several years have passed on the rock. You have seen the seasons turn again and again, each one layering a new skin of experience onto your soul. You are no longer the novice, nor even just the competent keeper. You are the veteran, the old salt. The rock and you have come to a deep, quiet understanding. The news, when it comes, is not a shock, but the quiet closing of a circle. It arrives, as all things do, with the supply tender. It is a letter with your transfer orders. You have been appointed principal keeper at the Pemaquid Point Light, a land-based station on a beautiful, wooded peninsula. A place with trees. A place where you can walk to a village. It is a reward for your long and faithful service in this difficult post. It is an invitation to come back to the world. And you have accepted. The boat that brings your orders also brings your replacement. He is a young man, his face clean-shaven and full of a nervous excitement you recognize immediately. He looks at the tower with the same mix of awe and terror you once felt. As you help him bring his single sea chest up the iron ladder, you see yourself, a ghost from years ago. You spend one final day on the rock, performing the ritual of the handover. You walk him through the duties, showing him the quirks of the new kerosene lamp, the specific way to bank the stove so it burns through the night, the particular temperament of the foghorn machinery. But you teach him more than what is in the manual. You show him the best ledge for fishing for cod at high tide. You tell him the story of Abby Burgess and point to the sturdiest part of the tower where she sheltered her family. You tell him to trust the gulls when they go quiet. You are not just handing over a set of keys, you are passing on a stewardship, the accumulated wisdom of the rock. That evening, you pack your own sea chest. It feels heavier than when you arrived. You pack your worn clothes, your journals filled with notes on the birds and the weather, and the small, smooth carving of the seal you made during your first winter. Before you close the lid, you take the small, worn child's shoe from the ledge and tuck it carefully inside. It is a part of your story now, too. On the table, you leave a small gift for the new keeper, a well-honed knife for carving driftwood, and a short, written note. Talk to the gulls, it says. But don't expect an answer. The next morning, you perform your duties for the last time. You sweep the floors, polish a last bit of brass, and make your final entry in the station logbook. Then, it is time. With the new keeper watching, you begin your last descent down the winding iron staircase. Each step is a farewell. This one, a memory of hauling oil. This one, a memory of the pain in your tooth. This one, a memory of Abby. You step out of the tower and into the bright morning light for the final time. You climb down the ladder and step into the waiting boat. Silas nods to you, a gesture that now feels like a welcome from an old friend. The engine turns over, and the boat begins to pull away from the rock. The new keeper raises a hand in a slow, solemn wave. You wave back. You watch as the lighthouse, your home, your adversary, your teacher, your silent companion, begins to shrink. It holds its shape for a long time, a familiar, reassuring silhouette. Then, it becomes less distinct, merging with the sea and sky, until finally, it is just a thin, vertical scratch on the horizon, a final, fading pen stroke at the end of a long chapter. And then, it is gone. You extinguish the great lamp, its duty done. The flame, your companion through the violent night, hisses out, and the lantern room fills with the cold, impartial light of day. You take your spyglass, the brass cool against your hands, and begin to scan the horizon, assessing the storm's aftermath. And then you see it. Your heart sinks. To the northeast, impaled upon the jagged teeth of a half-submerged reef known as the Dragon's Tooth, is a ship. Or what is left of one. It's a two-masted schooner, both of its masts snapped like twigs, its hull breached and listing at a horrifying angle. The waves, still immense, wash over its deck, each one seeming to tear away another piece of the vessel. It is the very scene your light exists to prevent. A failure. A feeling of profound helplessness washes over you. You are one man on an isolated rock. You have no rescue boat, no way to reach the wreck through the still treacherous seas. Your role was to be a warning beacon, not a savior. You are miles from the nearest mainland station of the U.S. Life-Saving Service, the brave men with their surfboats and Lyle guns designed for this very work. They are too far away. They wouldn't even know what has happened. You are the only one who knows. You are the sole witness to this tragedy. Your duty, as dictated by the board, is clear and cold. You are to observe, and you are to record. You retrieve the official station logbook, its pages filled with your neat entries about weather and oil consumption. You open it to a new page, dip your pen in ink, and begin to write. You note the date and the time. You describe the state of the sea. Then, you turn your spyglass back to the wreck. You search for a name on the transom, but the angle is wrong, and the waves obscure it. You note its description: two-masted schooner, black hull, name unknown. You detail its position, impaled on the Dragon's Tooth. You scan the wreckage for signs of life. The deck is awash, and it seems impossible that anyone could have survived. But then you see it. A flicker of movement. You adjust the focus of the spyglass, your knuckles white as you grip it. There are two figures, you think, lashed to the stump of the mainmast, little more than dark, sodden shapes against the splintered wood. They are alive. And you can do nothing but watch them. Historians and psychologists who study the records of the Lighthouse service debate the emotional toll of these moments. The logbooks, by their nature, are factual, unemotional accounts. But what was the reality for the keeper, forced to be a dispassionate observer to a slow-motion catastrophe? Did this duty breed a hardened, necessary detachment, or did the weight of such helpless witness contribute to the deep melancholy and psychological strain so common among the men of the service? Staring through your spyglass, a cold sickness churning in your stomach, you understand there is no easy answer. You are bound by a strange and grim protocol. The official instructions state that any wreckage or cargo that washes ashore is to be secured by the keeper for the government, to be held against a claim by its rightful owners. The rule was meant to prevent scavenging and looting along the coast. But the thought of it, of collecting the flotsam from this disaster, of inventorying the sad, broken remnants of these men's lives and livelihoods, feels ghoulish. Your gaze is fixed on the wreck. For hours, you watch. The sea does not relent. Each wave is a battering ram, and the schooner is slowly, violently, breaking apart. You see one of the figures lose their grip, washed away by a torrent of white water, disappearing instantly into the churning chaos. Now there is only one. You keep the spyglass trained on that lone, desperate shape, a human being clinging to the last vestiges of their world. You watch until, inevitably, a wave larger than the rest crashes over the deck, and when the water recedes, the mast and the figure are gone. The ship is now just a collection of broken timbers, being ground to pieces by the sea and the rocks. You lower the spyglass, your arms aching. You make the final, terrible entry in your logbook. 1:15 p.m. Wreckage fully broken up and submerged. No further signs of life. You close the book. The light you so meticulously polish, the flame you so carefully tend, was not enough. You stand your post, surrounded by the evidence of the ocean's immense, indifferent power, and for the first time, you feel the true, crushing weight of what it means to be the keeper of a light at the edge of the world. In the weeks following the storm and the wreck, a new kind of quiet settles over the rock. It's not the quiet of peace, but the heavy silence of memory. The daily routines continue, the polishing, the cleaning, the lighting of the lamp, but the work feels different. The gleaming brass seems to mock the tarnished feeling in your soul. You've done your duty, but you've seen the grim limits of its power. The ghost of the schooner is now a permanent resident of the seascape, a dark spot in your mind's eye whenever you look toward the Dragon's Tooth. One bright, clear morning, you spot a vessel on the horizon. Your first thought is of the Puffin, a welcome sight. But as you watch it through the spyglass, you realize this ship is different. It's not a stout, hard-working tender, it's a sleeker, faster steamer, painted a severe black and white, flying the official flag of the U.S. Lighthouse Board. It cuts through the water with an air of importance. This is not a friendly delivery. This is an official visit. This is the inspector. The steamer anchors a quarter-mile out, and a small boat is lowered. As it approaches, you see two figures, a sailor at the oars and the inspector himself, sitting ramrod straight in the stern. He is exactly as you'd imagined, a man in a crisp, dark uniform with gold buttons that gleam in the sun. He is authority made flesh. You meet him at the iron ladder, your own work clothes suddenly feeling shabby and stained. He climbs with a brisk, athletic energy, and when he stands before you on the rock, he doesn't offer a handshake. He gives a curt nod, his eyes already moving, scanning, judging. "Keeper," he says, his voice as crisp as his uniform. "We will begin in the lantern room." The inspection that follows is a masterclass in silent, methodical terror. The inspector, a district officer named Lieutenant Harris, moves with a chilling purpose. In the lantern room, he doesn't just look at the great lens, he examines it. He puts on a pair of white cotton gloves, a detail so famously intimidating it has become a cliché, yet seeing it in person makes your blood run cold. He runs a gloved finger along the brass framework, then holds it up to the light, inspecting it for the slightest trace of tarnish. He squints at the prisms, looking for chips or smudges. He checks the curtains for wear and tear. He brings out a small, angled mirror and uses it to inspect the undersides of fittings you can't even see, places you might have neglected. It's a classic inspector's trick, designed to uncover any hint of laziness. You stand by, silent, your heart pounding, as this man dissects your work, the work that has consumed your entire existence for months. The inspection culminates back in the dwelling. He scans your small, tidy space, his gaze lingering on the child's shoe you placed on the stone ledge. He doesn't comment on it, but you see him note its presence. His face is an unreadable mask. He has found no major faults, no damning evidence of neglect. But he has offered no words of praise, no sign of approval. The silence is his weapon. Finally, after what feels like a lifetime, he concludes his tour at the door. He turns to you, his expression unchanged. "Your station appears to be in satisfactory order, Keeper," he says, the words so neutral they could mean anything. "You will receive my full report by mail with the next tender." And that's it. He doesn't say, "Good day." He doesn't acknowledge the immense effort, the storms weathered, the profound loneliness. He simply nods, turns, and climbs back down the ladder to his waiting boat. The inspector's visit leaves a toxic residue in the air. For days afterward, you find yourself performing your duties with a nervous, self-conscious energy, imagining his critical eye watching your every move. The silence he left behind is heavy with unspoken judgment, and you scan the horizon each day with a mix of hope and dread for the mail boat that will carry your fate. Your world, already small, has shrunk even further, to the space between satisfaction and dismissal. Then, one afternoon, a new shape appears on the water. It's not the official steamer or the familiar supply tender. It's a small boat, a fishing dory with a single sail, and it's in trouble. The wind has picked up unexpectedly from the west, and the little boat is struggling, its sail flapping uselessly. It's being pushed dangerously close to the reefs that lie just south of your rock. It's not heading for you with purpose, it's being driven here. You watch as two men on board fight to regain control. They are losing. This is not a formal visit, it's a plea for sanctuary. A different set of protocols, unwritten but universally understood among men of the sea, now applies. You climb down to the landing ledge, ready a thick rope, and prepare to help. The fishermen, seeing you, manage to steer the dory toward the relative shelter of the rock. With a great deal of shouting over the wind and some skillful rope work, you manage to get their boat secured and the two men, soaked and exhausted, safely onto the ladder. Their names are Tom and young Charlie, a father and son from a small harbor town 20 miles down the coast. They clamber onto the rock, bringing with them the smell of fish, sweat, and the mainland. Inside your dwelling, they huddle by the stove as you make a pot of strong, hot coffee. They are full of gratitude and talk. For the first time in months, your small kitchen is filled with conversation that isn't your own. They talk about the poor fishing, the price of mackerel, a local wedding, a feud between two families in their town. It's a fire hose of mundane, beautiful, human chatter. It's like a drink of fresh water after months of drinking stale, flat liquid. You are no longer keeper, a title and a function. You are a host. You share your bread and what's left of your salted beef. They stay for the rest of the day and through the night, the wind too strong for them to risk leaving. You listen more than you speak, soaking in their stories, their easy banter. Historians often note that while the Lighthouse Board's regulations were all-consuming, an unwritten, higher maritime law often took precedence. The duty to provide aid and shelter to those in distress was a role keepers simply assumed. These unofficial visits, though rarely detailed in the official logs for fear of bureaucratic disapproval, were a fundamental part of the lighthouse's function, a point of humanity in an indifferent sea. The next morning, the wind has died down. Tom and Charlie, after profusely thanking you again, patch their sail, and with a final wave, they are on their way, a small, resilient speck heading back to a world of people and commerce. The silence they leave behind is jarring, but it's a clean, peaceful silence, not the anxious one left by the inspector. A week later, another kind of visitor arrives. You wake one morning to a strange, soft sound, a fluttering, a chirping that seems to come from everywhere at once. You look outside, and the rock has been transformed. During the night, a massive flock of migratory warblers, blown off course on their long journey south, has descended upon your lighthouse, the only point of land for miles. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of tiny birds are clinging to every possible surface. The tower is alive with them, their jewel-toned feathers, yellow, blue, orange, a breathtaking mosaic against the gray stone. You move slowly, not wanting to startle them. They are exhausted, their tiny bodies trembling. For a day, your stark, lonely rock becomes a vibrant, noisy avian metropolis. But this beautiful spectacle has a dark side. That night, with the light burning, the fog rolls in. The birds, disoriented by the powerful beam refracted in the mist, become confused. You hear them, small, tragic thuds against the lantern glass. It is a known, grim phenomenon of lighthouses. When you climb the tower at dawn to extinguish the lamp, the catwalk is littered with the small, still bodies of a dozen birds. You feel a pang of guilt that your light, meant to save human lives, has inadvertently become a fatal trap for these tiny travelers. By midday, the flock has rested. With a great, collective whir of a million tiny wings, they rise into the air, circle the tower once as if in farewell, and continue their journey south. The rock is suddenly, shockingly silent and still. All that is left are a few stray feathers, caught in the cracks of the stone. The visitors are gone. The men left you feeling connected to the human world. The birds left you feeling part of something far older and vaster. Both have reminded you that even here, at the edge of everything, you are not entirely alone. The day's cycle is complete. The sun has set, the lamp is lit, the great lens has begun its silent, sweeping turn. You've had your solitary dinner. Now, in the quiet of your dwelling, you perform the final ritual of the day. You sit at the small wooden desk, open the heavy, leather-bound station logbook, and dip your pen in the inkwell. The book itself is an imposing object, supplied by the board, its pages thick and creamy, ruled with severe blue and red lines. It smells of old paper, ink, and the faint, underlying scent of salt that permeates everything. This book is your confessor, your witness, and your link to both the past and the future. The task seems simple. You are to fill in the columns for the day, the date, the wind direction and strength, the state of the sea, the weather conditions. You note the consumption of resources with scientific precision: whale oil, 4 gills burned. Wicks, trimmed half an inch. This is the data, the cold, hard currency of your job, the information demanded by the distant, faceless board. It is the part of your life that can be measured, quantified, and filed away in an office in Washington. But it is the final column that holds the true story. It is labeled, simply, Remarks. This small, blank space is allotted for noting official occurrences, maintenance performed, supplies received, the passing of a government vessel. But for a man living in profound isolation, it becomes so much more. It is the only official outlet for your own voice, however muted and coded it must be. It is where the human story of the lighthouse is told, between the lines. Tonight, you flip back through the pages, reading the entries from the keepers who came before you. Their handwriting, some a neat, disciplined cursive, others a rough, hurried scrawl, tells its own story. The entries are sparse, almost a form of poetry in their minimalism. May 10th. Sea moderate. Painted lantern room catwalk. You picture the man, clinging to the iron railing, 100 feet in the air, applying a careful coat of black paint against the corrosive salt spray. November 2nd. Gale force winds from NE, replaced broken pane in dwelling. You can almost feel the chill of the wind blasting through the shattered window, the frantic effort to board it up against the storm's fury. These men were your ghosts, and you are now one of them, speaking the same coded language. You would never write, the loneliness was a physical weight today. Instead, you might write, Remarks, polished all brass fittings in lantern room. Twice. Anyone reading it would see a diligent keeper. But another keeper, or perhaps a historian a century from now, might understand. He polished the brass twice because the emptiness of the afternoon was too vast to bear, and the repetitive, mindless work was the only thing that could fill it. The visit from the 2 fishermen? It never officially happened. To record such a thing would be to admit a breach of the sterile, official routine. It lives only in your memory. Historians and literary scholars who pore over these documents, and there are thousands of them, preserved in national archives, debate how to read them. Are they merely objective records of weather and work, as intended? Or do they represent a unique and poignant literary genre, a form of minimalist autobiography where the epic struggles of survival, fear, and profound loneliness are told entirely in the subtext? The truth, you feel, is that they are both. They are a duet, sung between the man and the bureaucracy that employed him. Occasionally, a flash of personality, a flicker of defiance against the rigid format, shines through. An entry from a keeper in the 1870s reads, "Fog thick as molasses and twice as stubborn." Another, after a week of storms, notes simply, "Sea angry. The devil is beating his wife." These small flourishes are treasures, little sparks of humanity asserting themselves against the crushing weight of institutional monotony. You turn to today's date. You fill in the columns. Wind, light from the southwest. Sea, calm. Weather, clear. Oil consumed, 4 gills. Then you pause, your pen hovering over the remarks column. How do you summarize this day? How do you record the beautiful, tragic visit of the warblers? You cannot write about the magic of seeing the tower covered in life, nor the sadness of finding the small, broken bodies on the catwalk. It is too poetic, too emotional. It is not data. So, you dip your pen and write, remarks, large flock of migratory birds rested on the island from dawn until midday. Routine maintenance performed on clockwork mechanism. It is the truth, but a sterile version of it. It captures the event, but not the experience. You have translated your life into a language the board can understand. You sprinkle some blotting sand over the fresh ink, watch it absorb the excess, and then brush it away. You close the heavy cover of the logbook. The day is now officially over. It has been recorded, witnessed, and sealed. The book, your silent confidant, holds it safe. You are woken in the middle of the night not by a sound, but by a feeling. A deep, insistent throb. It's in your jaw, a dull, pulsing ache originating from a back molar. You lie in your bunk in the absolute darkness, the only sound the distant, gentle wash of the waves, and you focus on the pain. You hope it's a phantom, a dream that will fade with the morning light. But when you wake again at dawn, it is still there, a low, unwelcome drumbeat heralding a new kind of trouble. By midday, the ache has sharpened into a definitive, undeniable toothache. Eating your meal of hard biscuits is a slow, agonizing process. The cold sea air, which usually feels bracing and clean, now sends a jolt of sharp pain through your jaw when you step outside. It is a constant, invasive presence, a tiny traitor in your own body. Over the next 2 days, it escalates from a nuisance to a torment. The pain radiates into your ear and temple. A low-grade fever sets in, leaving you feeling weak and chilled. Sleep offers no escape. The chest is a heavy, dark wood box with a small brass plaque identifying it as property of the U.S. Marine Hospital Service, the government body responsible for providing medical care to sailors and keepers. You open it, and the smell of old herbs and chemicals wafts out. It is a time capsule of 19th-century medicine. Inside, nestled in small compartments, is an arsenal of questionable remedies. There is a dark brown bottle of laudanum, a tincture of opium, the era's all-powerful painkiller. There are vials of quinine for malaria, carbolic acid for antiseptic washes, castor oil, and a host of other salves and powders whose purposes are a mystery. Medical historians still debate the true value of these chests. Were they a blessing, providing life-saving aid and blessed relief from pain in the world's most remote corners? Or were they a Pandora's box of addictive narcotics and dangerous poisons, which, in the hands of an untrained, desperate man, could lead to addiction, accidental overdose, or botched, horrific procedures? As you stare at the bottle of laudanum, you understand both sides of the argument perfectly. It offers the promise of relief, but also the threat of a deeper, foggier kind of oblivion. You decide to try the laudanum first. You carefully measure out a few drops onto a small piece of cotton, your hands shaking slightly. You press the cotton against the offending tooth. The taste is bitter, metallic, and deeply unpleasant. But within minutes, a strange, welcome numbness begins to spread through your jaw. The sharp edges of the pain recede, replaced by a dull, distant pressure. Your head feels light, your thoughts slow and syrupy. You are free from the pain, but you are also not entirely present. You feel a dangerous sense of peace, and you understand how easily a man could come to rely on this little brown bottle. The relief is temporary. A few hours later, the pain returns with a vengeance, crashing through the opiate fog. You are weaker now, the fever higher. You know a decision must be made. To endure this is to risk becoming too sick to maintain the light, the ultimate failure. Your gaze falls upon the medical chest, and the oilcloth package within it. You think about the fishermen, Tom and Charlie. You think about the shipwreck. The light is everything. It is a non-negotiable duty. That night, the pain reaches a fever pitch. It is a white-hot, blinding agony that obliterates all other thought. You cannot go on like this. With a grim sense of finality, you get up from your bunk. You light the kerosene lamp and place it on the table. You retrieve the oilcloth package from the medical chest and unwrap it. The steel forceps gleam coldly in the lamplight. You take the bottle of laudanum and pour a larger dose than you should into a cup, drinking it down. Then you sit in the chair, the forceps in one hand, and wait for the drug to either give you the courage you need, or render the whole question meaningless. You are woken in the middle of the night not by a sound, but by a feeling. A deep, insistent throb. It's in your jaw, a dull, pulsing ache originating from a back molar. You lie in your bunk in the absolute darkness, the only sound the distant, gentle wash of the waves, and you focus on the pain. You hope it's a phantom, a dream that will fade with the morning light. But when you wake again at dawn, it is still there, a low, unwelcome drumbeat heralding a new kind of trouble. By midday, the ache has sharpened into a definitive, undeniable toothache. Eating your meal of hard biscuits is a slow, agonizing process. The cold sea air, which usually feels bracing and clean, now sends a jolt of sharp pain through your jaw when you step outside. It is a constant, invasive presence, a tiny traitor in your own body. Over the next 2 days, it escalates from a nuisance to a torment. The pain radiates into your ear and temple. A low-grade fever sets in, leaving you feeling weak and chilled. Sleep offers no escape. The chest is a heavy, dark wood box with a small brass plaque identifying it as property of the U.S. Marine Hospital Service, the government body responsible for providing medical care to sailors and keepers. You open it, and the smell of old herbs and chemicals wafts out. It is a time capsule of 19th-century medicine. Inside, nestled in small compartments, is an arsenal of questionable remedies. There is a dark brown bottle of laudanum, a tincture of opium, the era's all-powerful painkiller. There are vials of quinine for malaria, carbolic acid for antiseptic washes, castor oil, and a host of other salves and powders whose purposes are a mystery. Medical historians still debate the true value of these chests. Were they a blessing, providing life-saving aid and blessed relief from pain in the world's most remote corners? Or were they a Pandora's box of addictive narcotics and dangerous poisons, which, in the hands of an untrained, desperate man, could lead to addiction, accidental overdose, or botched, horrific procedures? As you stare at the bottle of laudanum, you understand both sides of the argument perfectly. It offers the promise of relief, but also the threat of a deeper, foggier kind of oblivion. You decide to try the laudanum first. You carefully measure out a few drops onto a small piece of cotton, your hands shaking slightly. You press the cotton against the offending tooth. The taste is bitter, metallic, and deeply unpleasant. But within minutes, a strange, welcome numbness begins to spread through your jaw. The sharp edges of the pain recede, replaced by a dull, distant pressure. Your head feels light, your thoughts slow and syrupy. You are free from the pain, but you are also not entirely present. You feel a dangerous sense of peace, and you understand how easily a man could come to rely on this little brown bottle. The relief is temporary. A few hours later, the pain returns with a vengeance, crashing through the opiate fog. You are weaker now, the fever higher. You know a decision must be made. To endure this is to risk becoming too sick to maintain the light, the ultimate failure. Your gaze falls upon the medical chest, and the oilcloth package within it. You think about the fishermen, Tom and Charlie. You think about the shipwreck. The light is everything. It is a non-negotiable duty. That night, the pain reaches a fever pitch. It is a white-hot, blinding agony that obliterates all other thought. You cannot go on like this. With a grim sense of finality, you get up from your bunk. You light the kerosene lamp and place it on the table. You retrieve the oilcloth package from the medical chest and unwrap it. The steel forceps gleam coldly in the lamplight. You take the bottle of laudanum and pour a larger dose than you should into a cup, drinking it down. Then you sit in the chair, the forceps in one hand, and wait for the drug to either give you the courage you need, or render the whole question meaningless. You don't need a calendar to know that the season is turning. You feel it in the quality of the light. The high, white sun of summer has been replaced by a lower, more golden glow that casts long shadows even at midday. The air, which for months was thick with the haze of heat, now has a sharp, clean edge to it, so crisp it almost hurts to breathe it in. Autumn has arrived on the rock. The sea knows it, too. The calm, rolling swells of July and August have given way to a more energetic, choppy surface. The water itself seems to have changed color, from a greenish blue to a deeper, more serious shade of gray. The hardy, salt-tolerant plants that cling to the rock have begun to wither, their brief summer bloom fading to a brittle brown. Your small kingdom is preparing to go dormant. The most dramatic sign of the changing season is written in the sky. The great autumn migration begins. It is not just the single flock of warblers you saw before, but a sustained, weeks-long river of life flowing southward. You see formations of geese, their distant calls echoing across the water. Great swarms of monarch butterflies, their orange wings impossibly delicate for such a journey, flutter past the tower. At night, the beam of your light illuminates the silhouettes of countless birds passing overhead, their calls and chirps a constant, mysterious chatter in the darkness. It is a spectacle of breathtaking beauty, a direct connection to the vast, planetary clockwork. But it is also a profoundly melancholy sight. Each flock that passes is another farewell, another reminder that the world is moving toward warmth and life, while you are staying here to face the cold and the dark. For you, autumn is not a season of quiet reflection. It is the busiest, most critical time of the year. It is a race against the clock, a period of intense preparation for the long siege of winter. Your survival, and the unfailing performance of the light, depends entirely on the work you do now. You begin with a meticulous inventory. You count every sack of flour, every tin of biscuits, every barrel of salted meat. You measure your reserves of kerosene, knowing that winter storms could delay the supply tender for months. You are not just a keeper, you are a quartermaster preparing for a long and uncertain campaign. Then you turn your attention to the station itself, your stone fortress. Armed with a bucket of mortar and a trowel, you inspect every inch of the tower and dwelling, filling any new cracks that the summer storms may have opened. A tiny fissure now could become a major, freezing leak in January. You apply a fresh coat of thick, black paint to all the exterior ironwork, the catwalk railing, the ventilator cap, the ladder rungs, creating a protective skin against the corrosive power of ice and winter sea spray. One of the most arduous tasks is securing the small wooden dinghy that is kept for emergencies. It's too heavy for you to bring inside, so you must haul it, inch by painful inch, to the highest, most sheltered point on the rock, and lash it down with heavy chains bolted into the stone. You know that the winter waves will be high enough to sweep this entire ledge clean, and anything not secured with iron will be offered as a sacrifice to the sea. Historians and psychologists debate the mental impact of this preparatory season. Was it a time of rising anxiety, with every task serving as a grim reminder of the coming dangers? Or did the intense physical labor provide a sense of agency and control, a way of psychologically battening down the hatches that armed a keeper against the dread of winter? As you strain against the weight of the dinghy, your muscles burning, you feel both. The fear is real, but so is the profound satisfaction of being prepared, of meeting the challenge head-on. The final step is to seal your dwelling. You retrieve the heavy wooden storm shutters from the storage room. You fit them over the outside of your windows, their thick planks blocking out the light. Inside, you install a second layer of glass panes, creating a crucial air gap for insulation. The world outside grows dimmer. The sound of the sea becomes more muffled. You are entombing yourself, a willing hermit preparing for his meditation. As dusk falls on the day you finish your preparations, you stand outside for a moment. A cold, sharp wind whips at your coat. The sea is dark and restless. Your station, with its sealed windows and freshly tarred iron, looks like a battleship cleared for action. You have done all you can. You go inside, light the lamp, and feel its warmth press back against the growing cold. The great lens begins its turn, a faithful heart beating steadily in the growing darkness. Winter is coming. You are ready. The world has lost its color. Winter has arrived not as a gentle blanket of snow, but as a hard, crystalline siege. For 2 weeks, the temperature has not risen above freezing, and the sun is a pale, indifferent wafer in a steel-gray sky, offering light but no warmth. The sea, once a fluid, dynamic entity, has become sluggish and choked with pans of sea ice that grind against each other with a strange, mournful sound. Your rock is no longer a rock. It is an iceberg. Every wave that strikes the shore, every puff of salt spray carried on the wind, freezes instantly upon contact. The lower third of the tower is encased in a thick, lumpy sheath of ice, a glittering armor that grows thicker by the day. The iron landing ladder is gone, buried beneath a cascade of frozen spray, looking like a fossil embedded in quartz. You are no longer just isolated, you are hermetically sealed, a specimen preserved in a jar of profound cold. This new, frozen reality brings with it a host of new and deadly challenges. The greatest threat is to the light itself. The fierce winter wind can hurl spray 100 feet into the air, and when it strikes the lantern room glass, it freezes, coating the panes in an opaque layer of rime ice. A frosted-over lantern is no lantern at all. The light, unable to escape, would be nothing more than a faint, useless glow. And so, your most critical winter chore begins. You must become an ice hunter. The work is brutal and terrifying. You don your heaviest woolens and oilskins, but the cold seems to ignore them, seeping directly into your bones. You force open the lantern room door, which is already rimmed with ice, and step out onto the catwalk. It is no longer an iron walkway but a narrow, treacherous skating rink. You move with agonizing slowness, one hand gripping the frozen railing, the other wielding your weapon, a long-handled scraper with a bronze head, soft enough not to scratch the precious glass. You chip and scrape at the ice on the panes, which can be inches thick. The wind tries to tear the scraper from your hands and you from your perch. Shards of ice pepper your face, and the cold is so intense it feels like a physical blow. The sheer weight of the ice is a constant source of anxiety. You look at the thick, heavy icicles, some as thick as your arm, hanging from the catwalk railing and the ventilator cap. You know that tons of ice are now clinging to the top of your tower. Keepers at Northern Station sometimes wrote in their logs of their fear that the immense weight could cause a catastrophic structural failure. Historians of technology debate how much these 19th-century designs truly accounted for such extreme icing, or if, as in so many other things, the entire system simply relied on the keeper's willingness to risk his life to manually fight back the elements. Your very survival is a constant battle. The main door to your dwelling freezes shut every night, and you must use a heavy pry bar or a small axe each morning to free yourself. The simple act of fetching coal from the outdoor shed is a perilous expedition across a slick, uneven landscape of ice. You live in a world that is hard, sharp, and brittle. Even the sounds are different. The familiar roar of the surf is gone, replaced by the eerie creaking and groaning of the ice pack and the sharp crackle of new ice forming on the rocks. And yet, in the midst of the hardship, there is a strange and terrible beauty. In the brief hours when the sun shines, your ice-sheathed tower is transformed into a dazzling, multifaceted jewel. It glitters with a cold, pure light, throwing off rainbows. The frozen sea, a mosaic of white and dark, gray water, has an alien, minimalist beauty. You are the sole inhabitant of a crystal palace, a king in a barren, frozen kingdom. It is a beauty that can kill you, but it is beauty nonetheless. 6. As dusk approaches, you finish your work on the lantern. Your face is numb, your beard is a solid mass of ice, your hands ache with a cold so deep it feels permanent. You retreat into the relative warmth of the lantern room, your body shivering uncontrollably. Behind you, the ice is already beginning to reform on the glass you just cleared. It is a Sisyphean task, a battle you will never win, but can only fight to a draw each day. You light the lamp. The great lens begins its turn, and the beam, sharp and undimmed, slices through the frozen twilight. It streams across the fields of sea ice, a single, defiant line of warmth and reason in a world that has surrendered to the cold. You have done your duty. You have kept the light alive. And tomorrow, you will wake up and fight the ice all over again. The long winter nights offer a unique kind of intimacy with the light. Outside, the world is a frozen, hostile void. But up here in the lantern room, it is a sanctuary of warmth and order. The steady, quiet turning of the great lens, the soft hiss of the lamp, the radiant heat it throws off, this is the beating heart of your universe. On these nights, with your duties reduced to simply watching and waiting, you find yourself contemplating the magnificent machine you serve. You've spent countless hours polishing its brass, cleaning its glass, tending its flame. But tonight, you look at it not as a chore, but as a miracle. It is a silent, glass giant, a masterpiece of physics and art. How does it work? How can a single, simple flame be gathered and focused into a beam so powerful it can pierce 20 miles of darkness? Before this invention, lighthouses used simple polished mirrors. They were inefficient, reflecting only a small fraction of the light and scattering it wastefully. Your lens is different. It doesn't use reflection, it uses refraction. You run a gloved finger over one of the outer prisms. Each piece of glass in this towering beehive is a ring, cut and angled with microscopic precision. The light from the central lamp passes through these rings, and each one bends the light, directing it toward the center, until thousands of individual rays are corralled into a single, unified, intensely powerful beam. It is an act of pure genius, an idea that saved countless lives. And it was the idea of one man, Augustin-Jean Fresnel. You've read about him in a book from the library box. He was not a grand admiral or a famous mariner, but a quiet, often sickly French physicist in the early 1820s. He was a genius of optics, and he conceived of this radical new design, fighting against the skepticism of the scientific establishment of his day. He understood that a massive, solid lens would be too heavy and impractical to build. But a lens made of separate, lighter pieces, all working in concert. That was possible. This marvel of French engineering, however, is not without its controversies. As you learn from your reading, there was a fierce rivalry in the world of 19th-century optics. A brilliant Scottish scientist named Sir David Brewster was also working on improving lighthouse illumination. After Fresnel's success, Brewster would spend years claiming that Fresnel had stolen his core ideas, or that his own designs were actually superior. You stand up and walk around the lens, watching the light flare and dim as the different panels rotate past the lamp. It is more than a machine. It is the physical embodiment of reason, a triumph of the human mind over the formless, chaotic darkness. It is a silent, glass philosopher, speaking a single, universal language of safety and hope. It is your partner in this lonely vigil, your most steadfast and reliable companion. You reach out and, for a moment, lay your palm flat against one of the large, cool, outer prisms as it glides past. It feels solid, intelligent. And in the deep cold of the winter night, you feel a profound sense of gratitude for the long-dead genius who placed this elegant, world-changing weapon in your hands. The ice has retreated, but winter's grip remains. It is a long, gray period that is not quite winter and not yet spring. And you are hungry. Not for lack of calories, the barrels of hardtack biscuits are still half full, but for flavor, for freshness, for anything that doesn't taste of salt and the inside of a barrel. After months of a relentless diet of salted beef and dried beans, your body craves something vital. Your teeth ache with the memory of a crisp apple. The monotony of the food is a form of starvation in itself. The supply tender is weeks, maybe months, away. If you want something different, you must find it yourself. The rock, which has been your prison, must now become your larder. As the sea calms, you retrieve your simple fishing gear, a wooden reel, a long, sturdy line, a few hooks, and a small tin of bait you've saved. You find a sheltered spot on a low ledge, the stones still frigid beneath you, and cast your line into the deep, cold, green water. For an hour, there is nothing but the rhythmic slap of the waves and the patient waiting. Then, you feel it. A sudden, sharp tug, a jolt of life telegraphed up the line to your hands. Your heart leaps. You reel it in, fighting the unseen weight, and finally pull it from the water, a beautiful, silver-sided cod, its eye a dark, liquid bead. It feels like a miracle. That evening, you cook the fish in your iron pan with a knob of precious lard. The smell that fills your small dwelling is intoxicating, a forgotten aroma of freshness and the sea. The flesh is white, flaky, and delicious. It is the most exquisite meal you have ever eaten. It is the taste of survival. This small victory emboldens you. You become an explorer of your own small kingdom, a hunter-gatherer on your 2-acre patch of stone. At low tide, the receding water reveals a new world. You clamber down to the tide pools, your boots slipping on the wet rock. This is the liminal space between sea and land, and it is teeming with life. You learn to spot the telltale squirt of clams buried in the scant patches of sand. You find beds of mussels, their blue-black shells clamped tightly to the rocks. You pry them loose with your knife, gathering them in a bucket. You learn to steam them in a pot with a little seawater until their shells pop open, revealing the small, tender, orange morsels inside. Each one is a tiny, salty burst of flavor. You turn your attention to the plants of the sea. In one of your books, you'd read about coastal people eating seaweed. It had seemed a strange, desperate kind of food. Now, it seems like a brilliant idea. You learn to identify the different kinds. There is the long, brown ribbon of kelp, and the reddish, leafy dulse. You harvest it, rinsing it in fresh water, and lay it out on the high rocks to dry in the pale sun, just as you've seen fishermen do on the mainland. The dried dulse is leathery and intensely salty, sea jerky that you chew on as a snack. You add the kelp to broths, where it imparts a deep, savory flavor, the very essence of the ocean. As spring finally asserts itself, the great flocks of seabirds return to the rock to nest. The air is once again filled with the cacophony of gulls, terns, and guillemots. You know from your reading that keepers have, for generations, supplemented their diets with the birds' eggs. You feel a pang of guilt at the thought of it, of stealing from the creatures who are your only constant companions. But the hunger for fresh protein is a powerful motivator. One morning, you carefully make your way to a ledge where the gulls are nesting. You take only 2 eggs, leaving the rest. They are larger than a chicken's egg, a pale green speckled with brown. You fry them in your pan. The yolk is a deep, rich orange, and the taste is strong, wild, and deeply nourishing. It is the taste of a difficult compromise.